Greetings to all our viewers. Welcome to this session on development and economic future of India. And we are very pleased to have with us today's speaker, Professor Dr. Amarendra Sahu. Professor Sahu has been the former General Manager and Regional Director of the Reserve Bank of India. He has also been a consultant at World Bank. He did his master's from Jawaharlal Nehru University in New Delhi and Duke University. He has done his Doctor of Philosophy from IIT Bombay. So he has around 40 years of experience in the financial sectors, working across the world in some leading financial organizations. So today he will be speaking about the economic future of India and the development perspectives as we are hit by this unprecedented COVID-19 pandemic. And we see that we are moving towards an uncertain economic future for India. And there has been concerns about plummeting GDP growth rates, even from RBI governors and others. So in this lecture, we would like to hear from his erudite self and his experience about how India can go through these troubled waters and emerge as an important power as India aspires to be. And the challenges of the millions of poverty-stricken masses, as well as the aspirations of the youth, how are these tackled by the government and the financial policies. So without further ado, I would hand over the session to Dr. Sahu. He would be showing a few slides and he would also be delivering his talk. So over to Dr. Sahu.
Good afternoon, viewers. Thank you, the organizer. Could not have been a better time than talking about this particular topic. All of you are reading and watching both audio as well as visual. What is the impact of let's call it a lockdown? A few more days are there, but one is still not sure whether there will be lockdown 5.0. We already have had lockdown now 4.0. In view of this lockdown, which is becoming a little ideological debate now, we thought we'll straight away go into the background of Indian growth story so far. After that, what has happened in the last 6 years in particular. After that, we'll see how this pandemic has really impacted Indian economy in different segments of Indian economy, and obviously what the government has done in the last few weeks in particular to address this slowdown, recession. It's a global almost recession. India is no exception, but India is lucky to have not been fully impacted because India is not a fully open economy. To the extent India is linked with the global economy, the export sector, that has severely impacted India as well. As you know, we are a part of the global economy now, slowly integrating very fast. But what is more worrying is we have a sizable portion of informal sector, which is badly affected. This pandemic, in fact, is a very interesting pandemic in the sense it has affected the urban sector primarily. And though India, as a developing economy for the last more than 4 decades, has been addressing the rural issues, financial inclusion, and by and large address those rural financial inclusion issues, but it has affected the urban sector primarily. Then, of course, we'll go down and look at the suggestions how to overcome this. Now, let's start with the presentation. While I present this to you, I would be happy if you could organize your thought process, possible, ask me questions or leave questions for me to answer in due course. Okay, so I believe I am audible to all of you. Let me move on to the first slide. The first slide talks about the macro impact of the global pandemic on Indian economy. As you know, in the last 6 years, right from 2015-16, the last quarter, we had a GDP growth rate as high as 7.9, 2015. It has come down substantially in the recent time to as low as 4.5 the quarter 4, 2019-20. As you know, GDP is a function of consumption, investment, and expenditure, and the trade, that is the export minus import. I have already referred to how India is slightly insulated from the global supply chain. Our imports are not as much, so to that extent we'll be partly insulated from the global pandemic impact. It has impacted severely the developed countries of USA and Western Europe. So to the extent India is not so much globally integrated with the Western and European economy, I mean American economy, India is insulated. But the exports obviously is a major plus point for India's growth story, which has been affected because of this. So to sum it up, the macro impact is under 3 major contributors of the growth story. Private consumption badly affected, investment affected, external trade also is affected. We'll see how much is the consumption getting affected, how much is investment in particular. The next slide. So consumption accounts for as high as 63% of the gross domestic product. It's not likely to recover for this year. Continuously, consumption also has affected the manufacturing, which is compounded by the huge unsold inventories lying in the stock. Now, it will take quite a long time to recover, resume the consumption as well as manufacturing because the supply lines are getting disrupted, since most of the supply lines are global supply lines. As you know, all are disrupted. We depend a lot on import as well as export. The second major part of manufacturing is the automotive sector, which accounts for 7.5% of GDP. That is as high as 50% of all manufacturing is automotive. Pune, where I am based now talking to you, is the hub of automotive. So I appreciate the major dent to the auto sector. Looking at the auto industry around my place where I live in Pimpri-Chinchwad. So the recovery of the manufacturing depends mainly on the recovery of the automotive sector. And the good news to share with all of you that Pimpri-Chinchwad Municipal Corporation, where the auto sectors are now there, all the Bajaj and Tata Motors, they have started operating in the last 1 week, not the full capacity, to 1/3 of the capacity. So there is some hope of looking up in the coming few months, but it will not recover and it will not be able to sell the unsold stock. To do that, we would recommend that government must slash down the GST for a limited period to get the unsold inventory moving. More worrying for us in the urban sector is the loss of the jobs. As I said that this is a primarily urban phenomenon, and in the urban sector, obviously, the loss of jobs is a major issue. India has a labor force of about 495 million, and the share of informal sector, I have told you, is as high as 90.7 overall, and in the non-farm sector, that is agricultural sector, it is as high as 83.5%. 260 million are employed in the agricultural sector, that is non-farm, and 205 million are in agriculture. I'm sorry, 260 million are in non-farm, that is the manufacturing, 205 million are in the agriculture sector. About 136 million workers in India. I'm giving the figures because you will imagine the impact of job loss. So, I mean, we have been worried about the jobless growth. That's a different debate altogether, whether the growth that India is witnessing over the last 6 years, even if it is coming down to 4.5%, whether it has been a jobless growth. But now compounding that jobless growth is the loss of jobs. So about half the total workers employed in the manufacturing, that is non-agricultural sectors, they are not they do not have a legal contract because they're in informal sector. So obviously they will be the most vulnerable. And in fact, most of them are wage earners. That means they earn their livelihood on a day-to-day basis by selling or earning for the factory. Okay, so the impact of all these many global investment firms have estimated that even RBI has and Government of India, they have accepted now belatedly that it's going to be severe. The GDP growth could come down to as low as 0.5%, or it could be even below positive, that is sub-zero. Many of these investment companies are also forecasting a negative growth rate in India too. So now the question we'll address in the next slides are firstly the different components of the consumption that we saw, different components of manufacturing, but how to overcome that. And how soon we can overcome that. Firstly, we'll go to the demand side. So it has both demand and supply side. Demand means the demand for the goods, and supply is supplying of the goods and services. Demand is done by the people like us and people like the factories in the urban sector. Private consumption is largely accounted for by food and non-alcoholic beverages. As you know, most of these restaurants are now closed. Why most of the restaurants are closed? Obviously, so I mean, if 26% is accounted for private consumption by way of food, other than what we are consuming at home, restaurants account for a sizable portion. In addition to the workers in the restaurants, they are all closed. We also have housing, water, electricity, gas, and other fuels. Fuels also we are not able to consume because we are all in lockdown mode. There is no travel, there is no usage of fuel. Luckily, the price of fuel has come down so much drastically. We have been able to save for the future, and that could be a potent for quicker recovery. So that accounts for about 14% of the consumption. Then you have transport, as I said. Transport is almost negligible now. The roads are all, highways are empty. Railways are stalled. Flights are stopped. Domestic, international. Good point that domestic flights are resuming partly, but Bombay, where I am located nearby, has not still decided to open. Majority of the flights in India, are from Delhi to Mumbai. So Mumbai being the worst affected, it's not clear whether we can welcome the air flights. So that is 18% of transport is affected. Then miscellaneous goods and services are 17%. So this is the private consumption, as I said earlier, which is badly affected. Informal sector, which I have mentioned also in detail, the top 5 states with the highest urban informal workers, that is non-agriculture, are, Rajasthan is affected by pandemic. Punjab is not badly affected, but Andhra Pradesh is affected. Chhattisgarh is not badly affected. Gujarat is badly affected. These, five, other than these five, we have obviously Maharashtra, which is the worst affected of all. They account for large urban informal workers. Next, we'll see what is the supply side impact. When we are talking about the global supply chain, we see the supply side impact. All the factories are shut down. There is no supply of goods. Shortage of raw materials in China for companies that are largely importing from bulk of the imports worldwide is from China. India is no exception. So China has stopped supplying. They have started resuming the operation well in time. Hopefully, that is a silver line for the rest of the world, including India. So China is the largest import source for India, and China has been badly affected. The origin is China, but the recovery is in the pipeline. So you'll see the different countries, how much dependent they are on China. Okay. Then you have the foreign value added component as per the gross manufacturing exports. India, we have, second largest, 27.3. After Malaysia and Vietnam. Now the question is whether the manufacturers will shift to India or prefer Malaysia, Indonesia, Thailand, Vietnam. So the positive side is China will lose its attraction, but whether that will come to India or it will go to the more competitive economies like Vietnam, Thailand, Indonesia, Malaysia, that is to be seen. That's why government is now, the stimulus package talks about local becoming vocal. Okay, so we see both demand and supply side impact. Now we go next to what is the stimulus package our Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman has announced recently, starting with the first 1.7 lakh crore initially, followed by RBI's about 6 to 7 lakh crore by way of different support. Government finally has added up all that so far, cumulatively announced a 20 lakh crore, that is about 10% of the GDP to stimulate the economy. As compared to that, obviously, US has pumped in about $2 trillion, about 10% of GDP into the economy. Though we claim that we are also pumping in about 10% of GDP, but we'll see the final details, whether it is 10% or 2% of GDP. We'll see the breakup of our, 20 lakh crore stimulus that FM has announced, including the RBI's announcement. Britain and France, they are also about to pour in about 5% of the GDP. Japan is injecting as high as $1 trillion, use 20% of the GDP. So our government's economic revival package, as I said, of 20 lakh crore, which accounts for about 10% of GDP. The actual revival package we have worked out separately, and it's not that we have done it. Many of the economists have found out that it is actually a government outlay by way of subsidy and expenditure about 3.21 lakh. It is no more than about 2% of GDP. Clearly, we need to do much more better. That's what the economists like Raghuram Rajan and other economists are of the opinion. Let's go into the breakup of this 20 lakh crore stimulus package announced by the finance minister. The FM has announced in 5 parts. The first part talked about 5,94,000 crore package. The details of that 5,94,000 also we'll see in the next slide. Part 2, second package announced about 3.1 lakh crore. Third package covered about 1.5 lakh crore. Fourth and fifth package covered about 48,800 crore. Then earlier, as I said, before this 5 parts, Government of India had announced about 1.92 lakh crore package earlier, and RBI measures was as high as about 8.1 lakh crore. So total works out to the 5 parts of 11 lakh crore announced by the finance minister, and previous to that, government as well as Reserve Bank of India have announced about 9 lakh crore. So our total comes to about 20 plus lakh crore package. As I have said earlier, when you go into the different components of the package, the next slide, we'll see the actual cash component of this package which government is planning to spend, which will not work out to more than 2% of the GDP as against the claim of 10% of the GDP. Now let's have a breakup. The Employees Provident Fund contribution by the government works out to about 2,500 crore. There is a cost to government here, right? Government is incurring an expenditure of 2,500 crore. Income tax refunds, we wonder the refunds that we got of last year claim 18,000 crore. It is our earned refund, whether that would be added up into this government expenditure. Maybe government has spent our own money and returned to us, which is of no cost to the government. So you can knock it off from the 20 lakh crore package. 18,000 crore is what is due to us, we got the refund. Okay, the extension due dates of filing, obviously no cost to the government. This is one of the features. There is no cost involved there, but it was mentioned in the package. 3 months moratorium on the loan repayment, that is for the banks to bear, no cost to government. There are all the announcements by the finance minister, that's why we are listing out each and every announcement. Automatic collateral free loan to business. Yeah, about 3 lakh crore government has announced, no cost to the government. Interest subsidy will be borne by the government to some extent. The next one is subordinate debt to MSME, micro, small, medium enterprises, about 20,000 crore. The government will bear the cost of about 4,000 crore. Equity infusion, 50,000 crore into NABARD and other institutions. Government will take share in the company. It's an investment, not a cost to government. Government will be holding that proportionate share of 50,000 crore. Then TDS tax deduction, rate reduction, 50,000 crore. Obviously, it is not a cost to the government. Yeah, last is Mudra loan. Government has been given a lot of interest subvention loan to Mudra account. 1,500 crore is the cost to government. Next slide, we'll see part B. The first one, part A, covers government to business. Let's go to the next slide, part B, the package. As I have narrated to you, it is necessary for us to go into each and every package announced by government. Part B talks about government to people. The part A we discussed now was government to business. Government to people obviously is more important from our point of view, in the sense the people are badly affected by way of job loss in the urban sector. So the Prime Minister Garib Kalyan package, 1,70,000 crore, includes 5 kilo wheat, 500 rupees to Jan Dhan account. It's a cost to government. As our former governor of RBI, Dr. Rajan said, the poor people, migrant workers, they not only need wheat or some 500 rupees in their account, but they also need rice, cereal, oil to warm their kitchen and make a livelihood. So probably this appears to be inadequate of 5 kilo wheat and 500 rupees Jan Dhan account. And mind you, everyone doesn't have a Jan Dhan account in India, and many people do not have a ration card. So many are excluded from this Prime Minister Garib Kalyan package, but government has made a positive announcement that the ration card will be portable now that the migrant workers are moving from place to place. Those who are having ration card, they would be able to utilize that wherever they are there. There is a demand that irrespective of the issuance of ration card so far, everyone who is found suffering should be instantly given a ration card. I am sure government is considering this also. The farmers are given about say 17,400 crore to 200,000 crore to the account of the farmers. It's a cost to government. Emergency health response package, Kisan card, loan, Kisan credit card is given by the banks. The loans are given by the banks, so no cost to government. Okay, loan to farmers is given by the banks, so it's 86,600, no cost to government. Support to the migrant workers, which would have been the first item in the agenda because of the precarious condition of the migrant workers. All of you are noticing every day. 14,502 crores government has announced, which is a good beginning, but it has to be reaching the migrant workers, and it should not be open-ended package so long as each and every migrant worker is taken care of. Rural infrastructure is 4,200. There is no relief package. The real cost to the government, I must make it in red letter. That's why street vendors are given 5,000 crore. You have emergency funds to farmers, 90,000 crore. This is what should have been more in quantity because farmers need cash. Housing loan interest subsidy is 70,000 crore. Since the subsidy is borne by the government, it's a cost to government. We'll go to the next slide. Part C is government to the banks and financial institutions. That is reduction of the cash reserve ratio. I wonder there's no cost to government, but still it has been accounted for in the stimulus package. CRR 1,37,000 crore. The RBI has given relaxation to the banks, so the more money will be in the hands of the banks. So liquidity to the banks is enhanced to that extent with the reduction of CRR. Then you have targeted long-term repo operations, TLTRO, marginal standing facility. There are RBI's monetary policy. They go on announcing increasing the targeted long-term repo operations. This is primarily to help the banks to subscribe to the funds created by government and in turn pass on that to the NBFC, non-bank finance company, as well as MSME. Being on the board of both on a NBFC and also a MSME, I can give you my grassroots level feedback. Earlier days, as you have seen, I was in Reserve Bank of India for a long time. Whatever we preach being in RBI, now after my RBI tenure, I am now observing in practice. So nothing like being on the board of the MSME and NBFC, who are the major two institutions affected. So the NBFC is partly benefiting out of this TLTRO funding. My NBFC has been sanctioned belatedly 25 crore TLTRO funds for one of the banks, public sector bank. Luckily, the other banks have not responded so far, whereas MSME is still struggling for the last more than a year, and even now, despite all the announcements by government, RBI, banks have not really started implementing the guidelines, and the branch level people, they will not do anything until they get instructed by the controlling officers. So this is 2,87,000 crore, no cost to government. Then you have special refinance facility, special liquidity facility, 1,30,000 crore, no cost to government. All these items of Part C, refinancing to NABARD, working capital, these are all no cost to government. So you can as well remove this figure from 20 lakh package, 20 lakh crore package government has announced. Now to sum it up, as I said, out of 20 lakh odd crore announced by the finance minister, it's only about 3,21,000 crore is the cost to government, which accounts for about less than 2% of GDP. and as high as 16 lakh 60,000 crore are by way of liquidity measures. What is important to know here that we are ensuring liquidity. Okay, supply side is being addressed by liquidity measures, but demand side has not been addressed. And the first and foremost casualty of demand side is, as you know, is lockdown, prolonged lockdown of 2 months. Everything is shut unless the factories start operating and the people employed by the factory and the informal workers in the urban sector start coming back and resume their working, earn their daily wage. There is no demand for the liquidity available in the market. So government, by way of addressing this liquidity measures, has not done a great job to address the demand side issues. The next slide we'll see how we should go about it. The question everybody raises: where do government raise this fund? Government is already grappling with a fiscal deficit target, but all the economists have given their view that at this moment fiscal deficit is not an issue to bother the government. Government can always convince the rating agencies where there is a downgrading likely the fiscal deficit goes beyond the projected level. But that's a temporary measure and we are witnessing emergency. We should not go by, and FRBM Act also gives some leverage to government to reach this target in emergency situation. So then how do we raise? Government has to address fiscal measures. We have already come to a conclusion. Where do we government raise funds? We have some unconventional suggestions. India has over about $480 billion reserves lying mostly in the US government securities, earning ridiculously low rate of interest. Even if a tenth of this is injected, monetized in the national economy, it will mean more than 3.2 lakh crore. We can monetize our foreign exchange reserves without obviously giving up the prudential need of keeping about, say, more than 6 months reserve at any point of time. Though it's not defined which is adequate, whether 6 months or 7 months, but we can roughly say that we can monetize only 1/10 of the $480 billion and raise about 3.2 lakh crore. RBI has about 9.6 lakh crore reserves by way of more and other things. This money is supposed to be used in the financial emergency, and this is the financial emergency. If it is not, then what else? Obviously, we could always use part of these reserves to tackle this fiscal crisis. Okay. Everyone, Ravi, welcome. Now we are coming to the end of the presentation, opening up for debate or questions. Now, what is the next is the new normal. If you can go back to my earlier slide, last slide. What is COVID-19? As all of you know that we are going to live with this. Even if there's a lockdown 4 or 5, it will continue to be a partial lockdown. So one could target the lockdown instead of making it a national lockdown, which slowly now is left to the state governments, and there is a calibrated withdrawal from the lockdown. So now there is a shift towards localization. Government has emphasized on this. We'll see how we are shifting towards the variable cost model. We have on the second, digital gets the real push. All the transactions in the last 2 months of lockdown almost, so we are mostly using our digital mode to make payment. So this will be the new norm after the demonetization. Cash is the king for business. All of you must accept, though we are on the one hand talking about going away from the cash mode to digital mode, but in India, in the crisis mode, cash will continue to be the king of business. So even Reserve Bank of India has accepted the reality. So instead of saying cashless society, RBI in the payment and settlement vision statement has said it should be less cash economy. Okay, the industry, manufacturing factories will move towards the variable cost models. They build sensing and control tower capabilities. Supply chain resilience is key. You would have noticed the Prime Minister in his half an hour speech and uttered the word supply chain about a dozen of times. So supply chain is the key, right from the supply of raw material, processing it, converting to finished good, and selling in the market. The global supply chain. We have a contradiction here. On the one hand, we are trying to go for localization. On the other hand, we are also talking about the global supply chain. Maybe we have to strike a balance. In open economy can no longer be, uh, you know, excluded from the global supply chain. The only idea is to minimize the disruptions in the global supply chain and start building our competitive economy so that we'll be able to compete with the neighboring countries like Thailand, Bangladesh, Vietnam, to attract the shift of the manufacturing raw material from China to India. China is losing trust by the big powers, starting with the US. So we should be able to attract those investments to India. That is possible only when we, follow these 5-6 different alternative models that I have discussed with you. So now I am done with my presentation. Thank you so much. If there is some time left, probably you could ask me questions. Let me view if there is any chart. I have Ravi Saxena here. If you have any question, probably you could ask.